Sometimes, beauty is a facade. The prettiest people on the outside are the most twisted, rotten individuals on the inside. They possess power, wealth, and influence, at least in part due to their appearance, but their personality reflects quite the opposite. Such people do not hesitate to commit atrocious acts, or use any means to reach their desired ends, for they are used to having their way. But for every charming malcontent, there exists an equal and opposite vile saint. These individuals may appear ugly, cruel, or even warped, but the person behind the exterior is far nobler than any common lord or lady. In A Song of Ice and Fire, no greater example exists of this occurrence than Sandor Clegane. Hello everyone, and welcome back to Exploring Fiction. Nicknamed the Hound and scarred by a childhood incident, Sandor Clegane is rough around the edges. True to his name, he possesses both bark and bite, with less of a mind for manners and knighthood than almost anyone across the Seven Kingdoms. He is crass, ruthless, and spiteful, cynical and pessimistic due to all he has experienced in his dreadful life. And yet, there lies the heart of a good man beneath it all. Sandor Clegane displayed multiple times across the narrative his penchant for virtue, further proving that outward appearances are hardly what they seem. So, who exactly is Sandor Clegane, and why is he such an interesting character? Let's explore. Sandor Clegane was born in the year 270 or 271 AC to the Lord of House Clegane and his wife. He had an older brother named Gregor, who came to be known and feared as the Mountain, and there was also rumor of a younger daughter of House Clegane. However, if she had really existed, little was known about her, as she supposedly died under mysterious circumstances. Along with Gregor, Sandor grew up on the estate of his father's house in the Westerlands, though his childhood was far from innocent. At only 7 years old, Sandor gained his signature malady that would distinguish him from his peers, among other things, for the rest of his life. A local woodcarver crafted toys for the two children of his liege lord, and like every younger brother, Sandor grew envious of Gregor's toy. Snatching it away for himself, Sandor began to play with it, but Gregor would stand for no such opposition. Already titanic in size despite his young age, Gregor dragged his younger brother toward an open brazier and held his face over the fire. Sandor screamed. The burning coals charred his face, leaving him eternally scarred and forever afraid of fire, and it took 3 fully grown men to pry Gregor off his brother and away from the fire. Lord Clegane explained it away as an accident, but even the common folk reckoned there was foul play on behalf of Gregor. Soon after, the boy's father perished in a hunting accident, paving the way for Gregor to freely stake his claim over the lands of House Clegane. Sandor, like many others, suspected the Mountain's hand in his father's death, but he refused to submit to his brother or even oppose him. Instead, he pledged himself as a sworn sword to House Lannister the day Gregor inherited House Clegane. He never returned. Sandor was a part of Lord Tywin's force during the sack of King's Landing, and after Robert Baratheon took the Iron Throne, became the personal sworn shield to Crown Prince Joffrey Baratheon at the behest of his mother, Queen Cersei Lannister. During his servitude to young Joffrey, Sandor gained the nickname the Hound, both due to his house crest, as well as his dutiful nature toward the boy he'd been assigned to protect. Yet, he never took the vows of a knight, finding them to be a hypocritical lot anyway. By the time of the current story, Sandor Clegane was one of the most recognizable men in the entire land. He was tall and muscular, noted as one of the strongest men alive by Sir Jaime Lannister himself. His eyes were gray and cynical, and upon his face was a large hooked nose beneath a mess of dark, thin hair. Of course, his distinguishing feature was the burnt half of his face, which was pink and lined with scars and burn marks. He had no ear on that side, only a hole, and black spots intermingled with fleshy red cracks. Bone peeked out near his jaw, and he was missing part of his lips, though his eye still functioned, having escaped the wrath of the blaze. The other half of his face, the undisturbed half, featured a prominent cheekbone and a brooding brow. Sandor did his best to hide the burns, combing his hair over as much of the scarring as he could, but it did little to alter his appearance. He was a wicked sight, and if one was fearful just from his appearance, his voice and demeanor did little to help, as he spoke deeply and held a fierce temper and quick wit. When preparing for combat, the Hound often donned his soot-hued armor with a cloak the color of olives. Atop his head he placed his signature helm designed like the snarling head of a dog, and wielded in battle sword, warhammer, axe, and dagger. When Sandor was named to the Kingsguard, he of course replaced his usual garb with the white pageantry of that order. But for now, he was just the Hound, sworn shield and lapdog to the oldest son of the king. Sandor Clegane is first seen in A Song of Ice and Fire when he journeys in the king's company northward in the opening novel, A Game of Thrones. Just as he has done for many years prior, Sandor rides beside the Prince Joffrey Baratheon on the road to Winterfell, and dutifully remains at his side wherever the boy goes. And on the road back to King's Landing, when the prince dismisses the Hound from his company in order to court Sansa Stark, Joffrey is bitten by the direwolf Nymeria in an act of self-defense by Arya's canine companion. Though plenty of recompense is paid through the death of Lady, Sansa's direwolf, it is not enough for Joffrey. Sandor, at the bidding of his masters, hunts and kills the butcher's boy Micah, who was with Arya at the scene of the encounter. Micah had done nothing, and almost everyone knew it, but Joffrey had complained, and so the Hound did as he was told. Still, it appears Sandor has no qualms about such a murder, and so returns unfazed to King's Landing with the rest of the company. Knights and men-at-arms gather from across the Seven Kingdoms to participate in the King's Hand tourney, and not even the cynical Sandor Clegane can refuse such a chance. He performs honorably on the first day, but seemingly negates it all through drink during the night's feast. Joffrey commands the Hound to escort Sansa back to her chambers, and the drunken man obeys. In his stupor, Sandor notices the young lady of Winterfell dares not to look him in the face. He, of course, is amused at her manners, naming her Little Bird, and reveals the true story behind his disfigurement. Sansa is appalled, and the Hound threatens to kill her should the story spread farther than her own mind. Yet, despite his words, he begins to grow fond of Sansa underneath his snarling exterior. The next day, as the King's Hand tourney progresses toward its climax, Sandor defeats Sir Jaime Lannister to advance to the final round. The other penultimate matchup is between none other than his brother Sir Gregor and Sir Loras Tyrell, the Knight of Flowers. With a clever ploy and plenty of charm, Sir Loras defeats the Mountain, but Gregor is none too pleased. He throws chivalry to the wind, and bears down upon the Knight of Flowers with the intent to kill. Recognizing the flame in his brother's eyes, Sandor leaps down from the crowd and stands between the mountain and his victim, and the siblings begin to clash. Had King Robert not stopped the duel, a titanic brawl it may have been. But alas, the situation is dissolved before any more blood is shed. For his part, Sir Loris grants Sandor victory without a final tilt, marking the Hound as champion of the joust. From the seats, even Sansa joins in the cheers. The excitement of the tourney soon dies away, and Sandor Clegane returns to his usual spot at Prince Joffrey's shoulder. He even accompanies the boy out into the Kingswood as his father participates in a great hunt. But the pair of Prince and his dog return to the Red Keep when Robert announces his doomed plan to seek a giant boar. Drunken and delirious, King Robert is skewered by the beast and soon dies of his wounds, propelling Joffrey straight to the Iron Throne. Lord Eddard Stark, current Hand of the King and lifelong friend to the deceased Robert Baratheon, has different ideas, though, and attempts to take Cersei and her children into custody with the aid of the Goldcloaks. However, one must never trust Lord Peter Baelish. The Goldcloaks turn on Eddard, and Sandor assists in their massacre of the Winterfell retinue. He also captures Jane Poole, Sansa's best friend, and locks her away in Sansa's room, not to be seen for quite an extended period indeed. Now with all their nearby enemies seemingly out of the way, Cersei and Joffrey are free to enact their will. Joffrey definitively takes the Iron Throne, and one of his first actions is to dismiss the respected Sir Barristan Selmy from the Kingsguard. This is an unprecedented action, as all previous Kingsguard served until their deaths. Barristan is humiliated, made no better when his spot is soon taken by Sandor Clegane, a man who is not even a knight, and who hates the very idea of knighthood. In his new role, Sandor is just as subservient to Joffrey, and can only watch as the boy commands the other White Knights to beat and punish Sansa for the insolence of her father and Joffrey's entertainment. Again, despite his gruff nature and appearance, Sandor shows the semblance of a conscience, trying his best to comfort Sansa and nurse her back to health after the brutal ordeals. Still, it is only a small comfort for a girl whose idealistic view of the world has been shattered to pieces. Sandor Clegane is in a similar position in the second novel, A Clash of Kings. Cersei Lannister reveals that it was her son's decision to appoint the Hound to the Kingsguard, and despite Sandor's demeanor, he is the only one of the White Cloaks not to abuse Joffrey's bride-to-be. Instead, he even shields Sansa from the worst of Joffrey's wrath on several occasions. One night, after her first meeting with disgraced knight-turned-fool Sir Dantos Hollard, Sansa comes across the Hound, and again, he is drunk. In his inebriated state, he finds her fascinating, but not in a threatening way. And again showing some hints of vulnerability, some hints of an empathetic soul, he asks her to sing for him. Still, he cannot help but to repeatedly mock her for her veneration of knights, especially after all she has seen and experienced. Sandor escorts her back to the Red Keep, and warns his little bird that there are liars abound in this place so far from home. As the War of the Five Kings escalates, and the King in the North, Robb Stark, marches south and west, the Battle of Oxcross ensues. Joffrey is livid at the defeat suffered by his forces, and Sandor explains to Sansa that her betrothed is furious with her brother. Sansa chastises and denounces Robb through her veiled mask of derision. Just as Sandor had warned, Joffrey orders his Kingsguard to beat the girl merely due to her relation to Robb, who had led his men to victory at Oxcross, and though the Hound is called upon, he refuses. Sir Dantos tries his hardest to intervene, but Joffrey is adamant. Sir Boris Blount finally acquiesces, striking Sansa with the flat of his blade, and when the Hound objects in horror, Boris begins to strip her naked on the spot. Sansa, however, is spared ultimate shame by the arrival of Tyrion Lannister, acting Hand of the King and gleeful antagonist to his nephew Joffrey. Tyrion orders the beating to stop and for someone to give Sansa some coverings, and it is Sandor Clegane who throws the helpless girl the very cloak off his back. Not soon after, during the riot of King's Landing, Sansa is dragged to the streets by an unruly mob of citizens, who have in their mind all the terrible acts of a vengeful crowd. She is again helpless and alone. The chaos has engulfed all, leaving everyone to fend for themselves. But yet again, in what appears to be a pattern of grace, Sandor Clegane comes to the girl's rescue. He beats away the rioters with sword and fist, saving her from abuse, punishment, and maybe even death in the ugliest manner. Sansa showers the Hound with thanks, but he brushes it aside. It is not his courtesy, but his duty to protect one such as she. Internal threats are not all that harry King's Landing, however. The forces of upstart King Stannis Baratheon bear down upon the great city, and the Battle of the Blackwater soon commences. Sandor, along with Tyrion, serves admirably, as the unlikeliest individuals rise to the forefront of the defense of all they loathe and love. A Kingsguard, but not a knight, the Hound fends off the forces of Stannis until deadly wildfire is unleashed in Tyrion's clever ploy. The concoction triggers Sandor's most base fear, and he flees with his tail between his legs, even refusing Tyrion's command to rejoin the battle. While the imp eventually rallies the throne's forces to win the day, the Hound's desertion bodes ill for Joffrey and the crown. But before he disappears, Sandor sneaks back into the Red Keep and up to the chambers of Sansa Stark. He waits for her there, drinking, and when she returns, he offers not to take advantage of her or commit any evil deeds, but to take her with him out away from this hellish abode. Though tempted, Sansa refuses, and Sandor instead settles for another song from his little bird. Satisfied, or at least content as he could possibly be, the Hound vanishes, abandoning the post he has held for the majority of his wretched life. Sandor Clegane once again appears in A Storm of Swords. He has truly deserted his Kingsguard position, but Sansa keeps his bloodied white cloak locked away where only she can find it, even admitting to herself that she actually misses the Hound. Her sister Arya, meanwhile, adds Sandor to her prayer death list. She mustn't wait long to meet him in the flesh once more, however, for soon, while she is in the custody of Beric Dondarrion and the Brotherhood Without Banners, the Mad Huntsman captures the Hound and brings him bound to the Lightning Lord as well. Surrounded by fellow outlaws who thoroughly despise him because of his past loyalties, Sandor Clegane is put on trial in the Hollow Hill. However, the charges brought against him cannot be matched to his name, until Arya recounts the story of how he slaughtered the butcher's boy Micah on the road to King's Landing eternities ago. Beric Dondarrion declares a trial by combat, with himself as the champion of the Brotherhood, and Sandor left to defend his own name. Beric sets his sword alight in the fashion of R'hllor's followers, and the Hound draws his own weapon, full of equal parts fear and resolve. In a fiery duel, Sandor defeats Beric, who is promptly resurrected by the Red Priest Thoros, and thus clears his name in the eyes of gods and men. Leaving him only with weapons, armor, and his horse, the Brotherhood tossed Sandor out of the Hollow Hill and into the wilderness, apathetic toward his situation once he is out of their charge. Many members of the outlaw band insist on killing the Hound while they have the chance, even though he emerged victorious from the duel, but Beric denies them. He believes the Lord of Light is saving Sandor Clegane for some greater purpose. But the Hound cannot stay away for too long. Having been stripped of his gold, he returns to the Hollow Hill to steal it back, and collides with Arya Stark in her attempt to escape the Brotherhood. Weighing his options, Sandor kidnaps Arya, who will demand a hefty ransom, and begins to drag her through the Riverlands and toward the Twins, where her older brother Robb is to attend an innocent little wedding as a reprieve from his great war. Sandor and Arya trudge through the Riverlands, taking advantage of what hospitality is given to them, and otherwise keeping to the road. But when the Twins finally loom in sight, it is not with a welcome and light heart that Arya spies her kin, but with one heavy and troubled. For the Red Wedding has begun, and Robb's northern troops are being massacred alongside him. The Hound acclimates perfectly to the climate, killing several men, and knocks his charge unconscious so she cannot act irrationally. When she wakes, Arya finds herself still in Sandor's care, and now moving away from the site of her eldest brother's demise. The Hound first escorts her to the eastern kingdom of the Vale, where he hopes to ransom her off to her aunt Liza Arryn, but soon finds the road up to the Eyrie closed and inaccessible. Running out of Stark relatives, he finally decides to make for Riverrun, where Arya's great-uncle Sir Brynden Tully still sits, stewing in Robb and Catelyn's defeat. On the road to the Tully kingdom, the unlikely pair takes respite at the inn at the crossroads. But as is common in the infamous lodge, they encounter past enemies. Polliver and other Lannister men formerly under the command of the Mountain are also resting at the inn, and Arya recognizes them from her time as a captive at Harrenhal. Arya, along with the Hound, who is starving and drunk, crosses blades with the men, and Polliver, the Tickler, and the rest fall to the fighting prowess of Sandor and the young Lady of Winterfell. In the skirmish, however, Sandor is grievously injured, sustaining wounds all over his body. Arya treats them to the best of her ability, but on the road to Salt Pans, they threaten to overcome the Hound. He cannot travel any further, and pleads for Arya to put him out of his misery. And as much as a previous iteration of the Stark Girl would have gladly felled the Hound, she refuses to grant him the gift of mercy. Instead, she leaves him delirious and decaying under a tree near the Trident. As Arya rides away, the request for death from the lips of the Hound echoes in her ears. Beginning in A Feast for Crows, the ultimate fate of Sandor Clegane becomes shrouded in mystery and rumor. There is talk that he leads raiding bands through the Riverlands, and even that he orchestrated and led a brutal sack of salt pans. Some say he has joined the very brotherhood that cast him penniless to the streets. In either scenario, however, he is an outlaw. On a dizzying, meandering mission to locate and protect the missing Sansa Stark, Brienne of Tarth also hears word of the Hound. Timion of the Brave Companions informs her that Sandor has kidnapped Sansa, but Brienne later learns at the Quiet Isle that it was actually Arya in the man's company. Yet, the elder brother of the Isle provides more harrowing news in relation to Sandor Clegane. He explains to the Maiden of Tarth that the Hound is dead, killed by the sword. The man claims to have buried the Hound himself, and that another has committed the atrocious acts, including the raid on salt pans, wearing the deceased Sandor's ferocious dog helm. As the elder brother recounts his tale, he claims Sandor Clegane was a sight worthy of pity, and even empathy in the end, and that he is now at rest. Stranger, the Hound's infamous and headstrong horse, even resides in the stables of the Quiet Isle. Later in her travels, Brienne finds the man who has adopted the helmet of the Hound as his own. It is Rorge, and along with Biter and other former brave companions, he conducted the raid on salt pans and other despicable crimes in the Riverlands. And now, they stand at the inn at the crossroads, at odds with Brienne of Tarth and her Valyrian blade. A skirmish breaks out, and Brienne kills Rorge, though sustaining heavy injuries of her own. As the Brotherhood Without Banners returns to the inn as the conflict winds down, Lemoncloak snatches the Hound's helm from Rorge's corpse, claiming it as his own. His brothers rebuke him, advising that it is a bad omen, but Lem brushes aside their warnings. Yet, despite the claims of the elder brother, and despite the rumor and hearsay spreading throughout the Seven Kingdoms, Sandor Clegane may yet live. As a changed man, or merely just a hidden man, the Hound's part to play in the grander tale could still be unfolding. By all classic estimations, Sandor Clegane is more akin to an animal than a human. His outward appearance strikes fear in the hearts of the innocent, and disgust in the minds of the cynical. Burned and scarred from a childhood skirmish with his own brother, Sandor has never recovered from his fear of fire, cowering from it like a dog. Yet the flames have left him fearsome to behold, like a snarling beast from the hidden corners of the world. Matching this exterior is what appears to be on the surface a fierce, dejected temper and attitude. To any passers-by or mere acquaintance, Sandor Clegane is a cynical being. He mocks knighthood and openly commits acts disavowed against the codes of chivalry and honor by which such men are supposed to live. Even his very nickname, the Hound, hints to a nature of obedience and loyalty to corrupt families and individuals. To the naked eye, Sandor Clegane certainly is a hound, a beast in all but genetics. However, for those who know and understand him and his broken spirit, the Hound is very much a man. While it is true he will follow orders no matter how vile, such as killing an innocent boy just because a pompous prince got hurt, the Hound takes no real pleasure in such things like his brother Gregor. And for all his dismissal of knights and their supposed code of honor, he is correct. In Westeros, many of the most celebrated and lauded knights and warriors are the most detestable people in existence. Sandor's hidden, empathetic nature truly propels itself to the forefront when in the company of the Stark girls. First, he builds a relationship with Sansa. Not a perverted, twisted romance, like many would expect from a man such as Sandor, but rather a caring, protective connection through which he provides a semblance of comfort to a girl abandoned and downtrodden. When the rest of the Kingsguard beat and break Sansa on orders from their king, the Hound does what he can to shield her from Joffrey's twisted idea of fun. He comforts her and acts as a confidant when no one else will. And when Sandor abandons his masters after the debacle of the Blackwater, he even offers to take Sansa with him. Though she denies, the pair separate on amiable terms, though both seemingly worse for wear. And not long after his departure from King's Landing, Sandor Clegane encounters the other Stark girl, the younger but fiercer Arya. Their relationship suffers a rockier start with the girl calling for the Hound's death. But when they both escape the clutches of the Brotherhood without banners, they too begin to form an inverted form of companionship. At first, Sandor takes hold of Arya as a hostage, but he proves to be much more than her captor. When they together witness the atrocity of the Red Wedding from the outside, Arya yearns to leap into action to save her brother, but the Hound is both wiser and more realistic, and so saves her from herself. And as their shared travels continue to unfold, he proves time and time again that he cannot bear to see her harmed or killed. Sandor even suffers multiple injuries in an encounter at the inn at the crossroads while fending off Lannister men with whom Arya had quarreled in the past. She cannot bring herself to grant him the gift of mercy, reflecting the mutual affection that has come to blossom between the two. Instead, Arya leaves the Hound propped up, dying, beneath a tree, and rides away. His entire life unfolds before his eyes, his sight and all his other senses ebbing slowly away. He has certainly taken part in his share of evil, but there is also good. Not many may see it, but both Stark girls and Sandor himself, at least, know it is there. What may be the end for the Hound comes at a time when he has broken free of the wicked whims of Joffrey, and instead uses his talents to aid those who are in need of his protection. Sandor Clegane led a life worthy of either scorn or pity, depending on the eyes of the beholder. In his youth, he was deformed through the jealous actions of his own older brother, and the scars from this event marred his appearance and character through the rest of his life. Many thought him a monster, a notion only compounded by his outlook on life and surface personality. But beneath it all was a better man, a man possibly more honorable than those who claimed themselves knights. For when the worst of times sprang upon Westeros like a creeping plague, the Hound proved a pillar of strength to many in need. Friends became enemies, and enemies became friends, but Sandor Clegane stayed the same. His nature and appearance were in stark contrast to each other, a dichotomy somehow coexisting within the same man. For beneath his rough exterior was a man worth something, a man worthy of praise. In ways both outright and subtle, Sandor Clegane was both man and beast. So, that's all for this video. Leave a comment with your thoughts. I'd love to hear them. Leave a like if you enjoyed, and subscribe if you're new here. I'd love to have you. Visit my website, russelawellsauthor.com, for exclusive reviews, fiction, and more, and sign up for my mailing list for free exclusive content. The links for both are in the description below. And, like always, I will see you next time.